The theme of this summit is Voices, Vision and Visibility. Voices. Listen to the voices of children and the voices of those who create platforms, initiatives and support practices that promote child development and well-being in our communities, nations and the world. Vision. See the vision of those who work toward a sustainable future by examining societal changes, monitoring global progress, and surveying changing perspectives which may provide opportunities for or threaten a positive future for childhood. Visibility. Elevate the visibility of childhood by exploring the collaborative efforts and initiatives and practices that promote the inclusion and participation of children and surmount barriers to help to allow them to reach their full potential. It has been an exciting time for us as we developed this program for you. The theme, Voices, Vision, Visibility, has given us as members of ACEI, staff members, board members, and members, something to really think about and consider as we shaped these sessions and as we shape future global summits for you. It's been quite an experience, and we've really learned a lot together on this journey. And I would like, if we can for just a moment, I don't know how many ACI staff members are currently in the audience, but if they could stand for just one moment, I'd appreciate that. So we have Michelle back here, Yvette Murphy, who's helping me out today, Anne Bauer, who's over to this side, and many others who have been involved in this process of development of this program. We also have board members with us today. If you are a current or a past board member of ACEI, if you could please stand. Board members also have a lot of involvement in how we shape our programs. Please stand. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. And hello to all of the members who are here, and if you're not a member, it doesn't matter. We're an extremely welcoming community. This Global Summit was designed, it's obviously operated by ACEI. It is a program that we cherish, but it is not owned by us. It's owned by all of you. You're the ones who are going to be shaping it in the future as well. So let us know how you can be involved in this effort. We're also very pleased to be here in Canada, such a welcoming nation, and to be in British Columbia, which is a simply beautiful province. And we want you to stay with us during the summit and enjoy the engaging sessions we've planned. But if you have time to spare while you're here, you can easily visit several places in the afternoon after you've attended all your sessions. So I just wanted to name a few of those so you would know about them. Stanley Park, you can see actually outside the beautiful windows here of this hotel. You can access Stanley Park easily. Gastown is the old area of Vancouver. You can get to Gastown very easily as well. There are shops with many wonderful Canadian products, including First Nations arts and culture pieces that you can take a look at. And there is the Inukshuk at English Bay. And the Inukshuk, if you know about that, I won't go into it all now, but it is a wonderful sign of hospitality and friendship, but is very important to the First Nations people as it guided their journey across the lands and shores of Canada. And Granville Island, which is a beautiful place and has little shops and restaurants that you can visit. And the Olympic Torch, which is just down here, very close to our hotel. And we will be walking to the Olympic Torch tonight for our candlelight walk for childhood. We'll visit the Olympic Torch together. So if you're interested in walking with us and holding one of these beautiful little tea lights, please meet us down on the lower level, Salon A. So it's level A, Salon A, at 7:45 p.m. tonight. This is a change from what was in the conference book because we want it to be a little bit dark when we walk out there with our pretty tea lights and celebrate childhood together. So we are here. We're ready to get started on our adventure to explore childhood, to make new acquaintances, and to experience inspirational moments together. I'd like to begin by introducing you to Carrie Whaley, our board president. Carrie Whaley is a professor of education in the School of Education at Union University, Tennessee, in the United States. welcome Carrie.
Well, let me extend my welcome to all of you as well. In my former role on my first stint on the board, one of my assigned duties was to get to be the official welcomer. And I always loved that because ACI is really more of a family than probably an organization. So getting to be back at a family reunion and welcome all of the folks you haven't seen all year is always a fun thing for us to do. I'd like to see how many of you are here at an ACI event for the very first time. Wow, check it out, folks. Yeah, that's something to celebrate. So those of you who didn't have your hand up, find some of these who did and give a very warm ACI welcome to all of them. How many of you, this is your first trip to Vancouver? Let's see that group. Okay, quite a few. Well, as Diane said, it is a beautiful city. This is my third opportunity to be here, and it's just really a great place to spend a few days, a few hours, however much time you have. So do get out and enjoy it. A lot of exciting things happening this week. You can just really feel the energy already. We're gathered this week, as Diane mentioned, to hear the voices of those who work to support children, to share our vision for a positive future for childhood, and to explore our collective efforts on behalf of children. These are lofty goals, are they not? I could begin our sessions by assuring you how much the children of the world need our efforts, by reminding you of rather dismal statistics, some of which I've even read in the program book. Things like how half of all the world's children are born into poverty, or that 8 million children worldwide die before they reach age 5, or 200 million children under age 5 in developing countries fail to develop to their full potential. I could do that. There's many similar statistics, though, like that you can access from UNICEF's annual reports or from the Casey Foundation's annual reports. So I would rather today put a more positive focus on the importance of what we've gathered here to do. As I look around this hall, I'm reminded that the soundness of an idea is not necessarily related to the number of people who subscribe to it. You take the size of this gathering. We're a fairly relatively small group, and yet look at some of the topics that we'll be addressing this week. Things like sustainable futures, promoting peace and happiness, promoting the rights of children, mitigating the impact of child poverty, meeting the needs of children with chronic illness, challenges and approaches to inclusive education, and many others. These are important, transformative topics, but sharing how we treat, care for, and prepare for our children is a daunting task, and by ourselves it can feel overwhelming. That's why we need each other and events like this. We need safe places where we can gather and spur one another on about things that matter. One of those things that matter, of course, is the children. In fact, the importance of children and families is found in virtually all of the sacred writings of the world's religions. For example, Islam calls children a blessing. Hinduism considers them a gift from God. Judaism calls them a blessing and a treasure. And the value of children is a central theme in Christianity. In the New Testament alone, there are many such references to children. One of my favorites is a story that's found in 3 different places. It's a story about a time when Jesus was traveling around Galilee with his disciples, whom today we might consider his roadies or groupies, front men going out. And he had stopped to chat with some Pharisees, who were the religious leaders of the day. And it wasn't long until a group of children had kind of gathered on the fringes of the crowd. I highly doubt this was the first time that had happened, because children, have an uncanny ability to figure out whether they'll be welcomed by these tall people or whether they'll be shooed away in frustration. And so it's probably not the first time that the disciples had seen Jesus engaged in some lofty conversation with someone, and then some child shows up and breaks the concentration. So immediately they go into frontman mode and begin to shoo the children away, clear the area. And I love how at that poignant moment, one of the writers, Mark, says that Jesus was indignant. And his next words were heard clearly by all. He said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them." Let them come. He didn't say bring them to me. Just get out of the way and let them come. I bet that the disciples were, rather reluctant as they had to stand aside and watch as the children surged past them into Jesus' embrace. Then, never one to miss the teachable moment, he adds to the crowd, "For the kingdom of God belongs to such as these." Wow, that puts children right at the heart of God's heart and kingdom, right at the center. So not only his disciples, but the crowds that followed him were beginning to realize that children matter. I want my life to be involved with things that matter, don't you? One of my favorite definitions of failure is to succeed at something that doesn't really matter. To succeed at something that doesn't really matter. That's failure. To ensure that what we do matters, our best recourse is to gather ourselves together as we're doing this week. Set out our ideas as clearly as possible where they can be examined and tested, and in this way they can be strengthened and improved. Then let's invite all who will to come alongside us and join us on our mission. Scholar and theologian Henry Nouwen said, "Loneliness brings despair, togetherness brings hope." So let's not see ourselves just as individuals, but as part of a much greater whole. And as we gather during these next few days to examine things that matter, let this be a safe place where we can walk and work and even weep together. Let's share with one another the hope that is in our hearts so we can leave renewed and strengthened for the important tasks that lie ahead. And may God bless you on your journey.
Thank you, Carrie. We'd like to move next to something that matters a lot to us, and that is the fact that, as many of you know, the peoples that have lived in Canada for thousands of years are called First Nations peoples. One of our collaborating organizations is BC Aboriginal Childcare Society, dedicated to working with First Nations children and their families. And they have actually, we'll explain it to you in a minute, but in your bags you may have received a small wooden paddle, and we're going to get an explanation of that from just a moment and the meaning of that paddle. BC Aboriginal has made special arrangements for us to have a First Nations blessing for our summit. We're absolutely honored that they have arranged this for us, and we think this is a very special time. It's a time of reflection, thinking about how we're moving ahead as advocates for children and thinking about the things that matter in our life. I'd like to introduce to you Chief Ian Campbell, who will do the blessing for us. His First Nations name is Chief Sukio. So Chief Sukio is the youngest of 16 hereditary chiefs of the Squamish Nation. His family lineage descends from the Squamish and Musqueam, First Nations of the Coast Salish people. Chief Campbell is an elected council member, an official spokesperson for the Squamish Nation, and is the cultural ambassador and negotiator for intergovernmental relations, natural resources and revenue, which is the economic arm of the Squamish Nation. In this role, Chief Sukio is instrumental in advancing the interest of Aboriginal rights and title through agreements around forestry, crown, land development, land use planning, recreational and park management, and the establishment of conservation areas. A public speaker since the age of 14, Chief Sukio has traveled both nationally and internationally, empowering audiences while sharing the rich, vibrant, and culture of his people. He is a very strong advocate for children and youth, and that's something that I was paying attention to as I realized he was coming to be with us today. All of the work that the Chief has done with children and youth throughout his time as a representative of the nation. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Chief Sukio, Ian Campbell in English, to come and be with us. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. First of all, I want to commend each of you for your commitment to the good upbringing of our children. You are here in the shared territories of three of our First Nations, the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh, three of our families who have certainly lived in this area for countless generations. There's many traditional place names in and around Vancouver. You happen to be in a place called Lac the future home of our Squamish casino. No, I'm just kidding. But, this land has sustained our peoples for innumerable generations, and there are many villages in and around this particular area here. We have been invisible in our own land for a very long time with the arrival of the settlers into this region of the world. And this has to change, that our history is your history, that this is a very rich history, that every one of these mountains that you see across from you are laden with mythology. Every one of these points and the waterways here have been our highways that connected our peoples through many chapters of change and transformation. So we see ourselves again gathered as our ancestors have done here for a very long time. And we remember that we are rich. We are rich as people, as communities, and we have to immerse our children in that connection to not only each other, but also their place in connection with all of creation. So I really appreciated the words this morning from the Mrs. President and from the organization. It's really good to have First Nations inclusion. It wasn't too long ago that our children were forbidden from sharing our songs and our dances through Canadian law. We weren't recognized as citizens in this country until 1956. So it was very surprising that everyone else except First Nations were recognized as Canadian citizens in our own lands. So this is my parents' generation. It's not that far ago. I'm the first generation out of residential schools. Some of you may have heard of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that is going around Canada right now, engaging our elders, the survivors, who, as children, were taken from their homes and their communities and forced to go to residential schools that were often run by churches and government, where they weren't allowed to speak their languages and practice their culture. So it was a forced assimilative tactic to remove First Nations people from our land base and allow for expansion of Canadian colonialism. So this is a story that isn't isolated to the West Coast or to Canada. It's a story of humanity and human versus human, and how do we overcome that adversity so that we can once again come back to our teachings, that of raising our children in a good, respectful and safe environment so that they can flourish. I look to our stories, our mythology, recounts many chapters, again, catalysts of change, from the Great Flood, which is a universal story, and all the countries I've traveled to talk about post-glaciation, when the waters rose and many communities around the world were affected. You go prior to that, you talk about the glaciation, the ice ages, and the many sheets of ice that were laden throughout these lands and territories that formed these beautiful mountains that you see in the images here. This is our safety, this is our church, this is our hospital, this is our government, our economy are directly connected to these beautiful places like this. And you are surrounded by that all around what is now known as Vancouver. So this history goes back prior to the ice ages. We don't want to be defined by scientists who tell us who we are and where we come from. We have our own stories to tell that talk about our first ancestors in this territory. Pre-glaciation, when there's giant animals around here. We talk about the mythological times, what we call Kwaikwaistwa in our language. A time where we can converse with all beings through our love, through our heart and our thoughts and our actions. Was our way of communicating our respect for all of creation. So those are old teachings that have survived the test of time. And we are not an assimilated people. We simply adapt to an ever-changing environment. So it is nice to be here to see the great work again that you are accomplishing on a global context, that we are not separate in our own silos, but we are all in the same canoe. And I believe in speaking with some of my colleagues that were part of the organizing committee, they wanted to explain why that paddle was so important to share that with you here on the West Coast, because the paddle symbolizes that we are all in the same canoe, and we all have a choice on the direction we move forward. We all must contribute our paddles collectively to move forward. Even when the Creator puts challenges before us, sometimes these waters will become very torrent with the storms coming off of the great Pacific Ocean, but we survive that through teamwork, through cooperation, through words of chinchinstuai, ayatuai, words in our language that our elders exemplify in cooperation and unity, supporting one another. So the paddle represents your responsibility as an individual to continue to contribute your efforts, your thoughts, your actions towards the collective moving forward to navigate this modern chapter of our history. So the paddle is also very utilitarian, as we are continuing to paddle up and down the coasts each and every year. We bring our youth out onto the waters and we paddle on big journeys. This summer we are paddling 350 miles north to a small village called Bella Bella to visit our Hiltzik family up there, one of our neighboring First Nations. So every year a different community will host a canoe gathering where we bring our youth and we bring them out onto the water so that they can learn the meaning of these paddles and actually put them to action. The little paddles that you see are also used in regalia. So collectively, you are all wearing regalia today by holding that. It means we are now focused in ceremony. When we walk through these doors, our elders always tell us, it's like we're walking into the longhouse. We leave our negativity outside. We come in with an open mind and a good feeling in our heart, as though we're dressed in our finest regalia, and we conduct ourselves as relay runners, that we are simply accepting the baton from our predecessors. We do the best we can while we have that responsibility to articulate our message, ultimately to pass that on to our future descendants. So what we do today, it will someday be traditional. It is that continuity of tradition. We often think of tradition as something 200 years ago or way back in the distance, which is true, but it is also what we do today. So by holding those paddles, you are accepting a responsibility to be a witness to this important occasion and the synergy, this global movement. You are mobilizing not only each other, but the influence that you will have in our communities is boundless. So again, welcome to our territories. I would like to share a song with you, which is our protocol. As canoes would come ashore to our beaches here, we would often sing a song to welcome them to our lands, and it would demonstrate that we come together in peace. So this is our Musqueam paddle song. It comes from my father's family, and I'm very honored to share this with you today, and hope you have an excellent day. I apologize I won't be able to stay for the entirety of the day. I'm certainly honored to be here this morning to share a little bit of time with you.